We're trying, since this B'Lev Echad, which is a beautiful organization, we're interested in promoting Ben Adam L'Chaveiro, loving our fellow Jew, and this topic of Hakarat HaTov really covers a lot of area. But I just want to start with a Hakdama, with an introduction. When we deal with Hakarat HaTov, which we'll explain what that means, literally it means recognizing the good. Many people translate it as gratitude, thankfulness, many different terms. So we have to realize that our relationships between our peers, our spouses, our children, people in the world are not isolated from our relationship with God. We really can't talk about one without the other. You can't talk about recognizing the good in relation to ourselves without really talking about God. And the reason, as the Rambam really says, let's say concerning Ida, I remember when I was in college, so in my introduction to art class, we had a real big apikoros, a real big heretic as our teacher, and he just went on and on, bashing religion. That was basically the class. In between, we looked at some art pieces. So he like singled out Shir HaShirim, Song of Songs, as the ultimate, and look at this religion, right? This one big love song, this racy thing. How could this be? This is what your religion is. And if you look in the Rambam, what do you see? You see that when he talks about Shir HaShirim, in the Rambam itself, he explains that all our relationships with our spouses, with everyone on this world, is really just all a school. It's a little training ground for us to enable us to have a real relationship with God. And of course, everything's real. Our relationships with people are real, but at the same time, that's how we learn to relate to God. So we can't really talk about, and therefore that's why the Talmud says that Song of Songs is the holiest book of the, right? It's one thing if the rabbis just wanted to sweep it under the corner, right? But instead we make this startling statement. Song of Songs is the holiest book of Tanakh, right? So then you go, what do you mean holiest book? Right? That's the one we censor, right? Open up the Chumash. Art School already has the whole metaphorical translation down. It's censored out for all our kids. Right? You have to go to the bottom to see what it really means. But no, we say it's because when the Rambam says that your relationship with God is literally like a lovesick person pining for their spouse, right? Each day, hoping for some sort of word, some little card, some relationship. That's our relationship with God. That's real to us because we could relate to it. So when it comes to Hakarat HaTov, it's really all one, recognizing the good with God, with our lives and ourselves. Now, what's amazing about gratitude, and this thing called Hakarat HaTov, is that it really ties all our other traits together and it's really almost like a no-brainer. If we have this gratitude, our lives will be blessed. We'll be happy. We will just wake up and we'll put a big smile on our face, and that simcha, that joy, will be infectious and spread to everyone around us. There's an amazing story about that on this paper that we're going to hand out. But we all have much to be grateful for. But no, we'll do it at the end. But gratitude, creates this happiness, this joy. It helps us be calm and serene, and it helps us connect with and love people. And it elevates our entire life. And when we master gratitude, we become alive. But what is this gratitude? I'm speaking already about gratitude. The reason why this subject is called recognizing the good is because that's really the first step in terms of gratitude. Everyone has gratitude. It's an inborn human trait, and we'll talk about that. We'll see sources about it. If I feel someone really did me a favor, really went out of their way, really did me this amazing thing, I'm going to really feel gratitude. It doesn't take so much to really feel indebted. But the problem is, no one ever does me any favors, right? No one ever does anything good for me. If I would find that one person, right? It's like one of my rebbeim. It was a funny story. So one of the rebbeim. Actually, I don't know if it was my rebbe. No, it was a different rebbe. And he, I think I heard this on the Shmuz rebbe. Actually, he was a rebbe in yeshiva. And so when he was talking over with a kid, he taught kids in high school. And one kid comes over, they're schmoozing about whether he's going to go back. His father's going to pay for his plane ticket. No, I don't want to do it. Why not? I don't want to be indebted to my father, right? I don't want to be indebted to my father. So the Rebbe looked at him like, buddy, you're 17 years too late for that. What do you mean you don't want to be indebted? But we have this illusion, we have this difficulty recognizing the good. That's why Hakarat HaTov, even though it's gratitude, but we have an easy time giving gratitude when we actually feel that it's warranted. The trick is recognizing that good. But even before then, the reason why we call it recognizing the good is because we're a little bit obtuse. We're a little bit dull in this world. We really don't recognize. We don't even think about good things. Sometimes it takes a little bit of effort to learn about, right? We know, as Rav Weinberg says, in another area, if someone goes into a museum and he looks at that beautiful modern art painting, right? So Rabbi Bresler walks into the Museum of Modern Art, which I had to do in that class. And I wrote about it, whatever, and all my feelings about it and how I really was enthralled with it. But if you don't work at it, so you don't really know what it's saying at all. You need a little bit of work. I naturally don't like dry wine. I hate it. I can't stand it. I love when people bring it to us as presents. I put it out for them, but I like a good manischewitz. That's the limit of my palate. So what does that mean? A person, what do people do in social situations? Well, I want to drink beer, I want to drink wine. You learn about it. You force yourself to drink it until you like it and you can recognize it and then you enjoy it. Good in this world isn't always so obvious. It takes some contemplation. It takes it takes effort on our part to start recognizing it. And so the first part of gratitude has to be actually recognizing, understanding that there is some good here. That we could recognize that a good thing happened to me. And a lot of times we don't recognize that arguments always come up many times when one party perceives the good thing done for them as very small or inconsequential. On the other side, the person doing it, I had to do this and I had to do that, and I had to cancel this and do this, and they don't even show any gratitude. There's always that imbalance, and that's because one person is not seeing, their eyes aren't open, they're not perceiving that, like it actually said on the card, like that. It talked about that. The idea that you have to perceive what's going on in the other person's life in order to understand what they have done for you. Okay, so recognizing the good means recognizing the good, actually be able to see good. Then you have to recognize who's giving you the good, right? And then once you recognize that, you have to be able to feel gratitude to that person, and then to recognize the giver, i.e. that you actually have to show it in some way. Right? It's almost like an obligation. When the rabbis talk about recognizing the good, they really talk about it as an obligation. You have an obligation. There's an obligation here that someone gave something to you. How could you not respond? It's almost like a monetary thing. But that's not all it is. Okay. Now, here we have so we found an interesting thing by the mitzvah of Bikurim. The mitzvah of Bikurim is the bringing of the first fruits. Right? A good mitzvah. Of course, that's one of the mitzvahs that is about gratitude, right? Because here we have, we're bringing the first fruits. We, as an agricultural economy, we tend to forget that really we have to thank God for our produce. That's really the secret. If you ever want to know about Cain and Abel, right? What exactly happened there? Why did Cain kill Abel? So if you look in the Torah, you'll find there's only two pieces of information we know about Cain and Abel. We know anybody know the piece of information? We know about them? We know their names.
Their brothers.
Cain and Hevel, we know their brothers, right? Sure, I guess. And their father was Adam, and their mother was Eve. But yeah, we know that their names, Cain and Hevel, and we know their jobs. Right? Cain was, yeah?
We know that.
Right. So Cain was someone who was a tiller of the soil, and Hevel was someone who took care of sheep. And Rabbi Hirsch explains with those two pieces of information, we have the whole story. How do we have the whole story? Because we know all our great leaders of the Jewish people were all shepherds for some reason. They're all shepherds around sheep, whatever. They're always that type of thing. And the idea is that here you're taking care of a living being. You're out in the midst of the elements. Plenty of time to think about your humility. Think about how God is taking care of you. How you're taking care of the sheep. It's the opposite when it comes to a farmer. So that's Hevel. Hevel is like nothingness. Cain means I've acquired something. Yeah, right? That was Eve. She acquired something. That was her first, a little bit of a boastful statement to make. When she had her kid, he was named after acquisition. When someone farms, so who produced this loaf of bread, right? We all know it wasn't when it was God. I'm the one that slaved, and I tilled the soil, and I plowed, and I planted, and then I irrigated, and came out, and then I winnowed, and I threshed, and all the things I did to produce this bread. So this is the type of bread. So, and what happened? He didn't give the best to God. There was some disconnect there. He couldn't give the best, and there are different commentaries about it, but Rav Hirsch has that idea is that the gratitude wasn't there because it's so hard when you're a tiller of soil in your agricultural economy. It's like you did so much work for it, and now I have to go and recognize that it's really God that gives us the bounty. So there's a mitzvah bikurim. The mitzvah says, your first fruits, you should take it to Jerusalem and present it to God. Why? Because you have to realize that as much as we worked on it, we make a blessing every Shabbos. Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. God produces bread from the ground. We skip all the steps, all my planting, all my digging. We skipped it all. Yeah, God zooped it out of the ground, right? And that's the bracha we make because we're thanking God, and we really do believe it's all from God. So we have this mitzvah of bikurim. Now, there's an interesting play on words. It says Bereshis bar Elokim. In the beginning, God created the heavens and earth. So the rabbis, the Rabbanan, they make a drasha. What's the drasha? They say Bereshis bar Elokim because of Rashis, because of the first. That's why God created the heavens and earth, for the sake of the first. And then it lists three things that are called Rashis, right? Rashis is the nation of Israel. Okay, for the Jewish people. For the sake of the Torah, it's called Rashis. And for the mitzvah Bikurim, which is called Rashis. So everyone is up and like, wait, I understand. Like, it's a nice mitzvah, it's very nice, Kids can, maybe if you have a tree, kids can tie a bow around the fruit. They come home with their sheets and all the 7 species are on it. But it's like there's so many other mitzvahs. Like, what do you mean the world was created for that? But we begin to see, no, the world is created. Gratitude is not just another thing. Another thing, like anger, patience, this, that. Oh, there's another Zelig Pliskin book. Gratitude, great. I have it on my shelf along with the rest of them. Serenity, this. No, gratitude is something. It is part of what the creation of the world, literally. Jews, Torah, gratitude. So here we have, so that's what the Al-Shich says. That's from the Al-Shich. And I have to stop at this point just to mention that all the stuff that I'm saying today, I got from other places. So part of gratitude is all the wisdom you get also. You have to be able to give, the Torah. The Gemara says that someone who quotes something in the name of somebody else brings geula, brings the eventual redemption to the world. Which everyone asks the question of what does that mean? Like why, if you say something in the name of someone else, and it is a little bit, so I was just discussing, I had the Seed Boys over for dinner. So we were schmoozing about this, trying to figure out why is it that, if you actually don't take credit for someone else's thing, if you don't plagiarize someone else, then that's going to bring Messiah, that's going to bring Mashiach. What's the connection? Again, there's a lot of things. We came out with this idea that in the end of days, what's life going to be like already? God will be revealed into the world. We're not going to have the giant challenges that we have fighting evil, and we like that sort of. It's a little bit of a cushy thing to our ego that we fight evil. It's going to be a little bit of a hard life there. We're just going to serve God, and we have to nullify our own egos. Why am I just giving you a shiur without quoting everybody? Because I feel that Rabbi Bresler is such a big scholar. He knows so much, right? I want people to think that I know so much. It's such a boost to my ego. But that's a problem. A generation that steals other people's Torah without giving them credit is a generation that's not ready for the Messiah. It's not ready for a time where we really have to nullify our own egos and just praise God and be just living with the kingship of Hashem and doing what's right without our egos. We're not ready for that. Someone who gives credit where credit is due. Okay, we're getting there. We're getting to that point. Okay. Chaim Shmulevitz, famous Mirror Rosh Hashiva, writes, so he says this is words, Mida zo shel hakaras ha'adam b'chiyuvo m'shirashas hi b'tuvo shel adam. That the attribute of a person recognizing his obligation, meaning Hakarat HaTov in this case, is deeply rooted in their nature. Meaning that we're talking about Hakarat HaTov, a nice thing. No, it's not just a nice thing. God actually, from the sources it seems, God actually built us as gratitude machines. We need to give over gratitude. If we want to succeed in the world, if we want to be happy in the world, if we want to bring joy to other people, we need to feel gratitude, we need to express gratitude. That's how we're going to be successful in the world. It's built into us. We're literally designed that way. And there's another quote from the Taryas Avram, the famous Mashgiach, I think, right? The Mashgiach of the Slobodka, I think. Calls Taryas HaSeichel. He calls it an element of natural law. There are certain things called Taryas HaSeichel, which literally means like laws of common sense almost. That he says it's part of the Derech Eretz that precedes the Torah. If you look in the Torah, there's going to be no mitzvah that says, show gratitude, per se. Of course, you're going to find different examples throughout the Torah, as we find right at the beginning of the Torah. The Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, so it talks about, we think, why was Adam and Eve kicked out of the Garden of Eden? All right, they ate from the apple, they ate from whatever fruit it was. It could have been a grape, it could be wheat, whatever. They ate the wrong fruit, they didn't listen to God, they were kicked out of the Garden of Eden. So here comes Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, and he says, no, that's not what happened. God wasn't ready to kick them out yet. When did he decide the straw that broke the camel's back, they're going to be kicked out of the Garden of Eden? Was when God said to Adam, what do you do? And he said, oh, it was that lady, it was that woman you gave me. It's her fault. You shouldn't, right? So all of a sudden, instead of Adam fessing up, he not only doesn't he fess up, but he says, the woman you gave me, she gave me the fruit and I ate it. Rashi says Adam was ungrateful. God presented Adam this wonderful gift called a wife, and he instead threw it back in his face and blamed her for his troubles. That's the beginning that was the end, basically, for Adam. Okay, and we have a problem here. We want to focus on the good, and there's really no limit to what we don't have. We don't realize how much we have. And I know myself, I'm really with you in the same boat. There's an old joke that when the Bali Musar would get up, when a Musar master wanted to reprove the crowd, he would say, I'm not really speaking to you, I'm really speaking to myself. If you want, you could also listen in. Right? So I really am speaking to myself. We're all human here, and we all have these problems, but it's really, our lives are filled with so much potential for satisfaction, but instead it's endless dissatisfaction. Right? And the great Talmudic proverb, who is rich? Someone who's not satisfied with their lot. That's not what it says. Sameach b'chalko means happy with your lot. It's not enough just to be, oh God, okay, I'm satisfied with my lot. It's not enough. You have to say, oh wow, look at this. See this suit? I remember when I cracked off the button. It's now I have a button. I love it. Every time I look at it, this is a great suit. I'm probably the only one with the 2.5 button suit in the whole Seattle. You have to love it. You have to caress it. You have to be in love with what you have. Those who rejoice in their own lot, right? Sameach b'chalko. Now, Hakarat HaTov is recognizing the good. So that part of that means practicing already. We could all start right now because Hakarat HaTov, the first step is just recognizing what we have. We have so much, no matter who's here. And I don't want to go through, a list, but, we tend to focus on the negativity and what we don't have, and that's our first block. We're always so involved with what we don't have, which comes from another issue, and that other issue we'll get to soon. But first, I want to say a story. So, Rabbi Saul Salanter was passing by, I don't know, I guess the Starbucks of Poland. I don't know what was around back then, but he was passing by. It says they were passing by a coffee shop, right? So he was passing by the coffee shop, and he saw that the mochaccino, whatever was over there, was extremely expensive. So he went over. He said, I don't understand something. It's only what is it, hot water, a few coffee beans, a little bit of sugar. Why are you charging so much? So he said, you're right. For the coffee, the price of how much we pay, right? It wasn't fair trade back then, so it really was cheap. It really was cheap back then. But here in the restaurant, we have a decor, we have beautiful china, we have ambiance, we have music, we have all this stuff going around, and we're serving this to you, and you get to sit and sip your coffee, and it's amazing. We have free Wi-Fi, probably, whatever. Reb Salanter's face, he lit up when he heard that. Why? So I always wondered, I always had a problem. I would go, I'm thirsty, so I go take a cup of water, and what blessing do you make on a cup of water? Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam she'akol niyeh b'dvaro. That everything was created with His word. And I'm saying, I think to myself, what do you mean everything was created? I'm just taking a little bit of water. It's just a little bit of water. I'm making this grandiose bracha. But now I realize, when I pick up that cup, I feel the cup, I feel the texture of the cup, I'm listening to the birds chirping, I'm taking a deep breath, I'm thinking of my life, I'm thinking of all the things that I have, and that whole ambiance is going around while I take the cup. Is this mine?
Yes.
Oh wow, it would have been really good if I just made the bracha, segued right in. Amen. Each bird has a different voice, each flower has a different scent. He understood that there's so much to appreciate. It's not just the water, and that's why we make this bracha and everything. Okay, now, when we talk about recognizing the good, it's, we have to notice things, we have to be connoisseur of the world, we have to think about things. We can't just plow through life. We have to think about our lives a little bit. And again, there are all these exercises. And we have this block because, pain is always this overwhelming emotion that we feel, and it sort of blocks everything else. And therefore we have to be a little bit, even though, I guess my Rosh Yeshiva explained it as thus, that our emotions are really, it's like the motor, it's like the engine, it moves us. But our brain is like the keys. We have to know when to turn it on, when to turn it off. And sometimes we have to sit down and block out whatever emotions we have and just think. And what's going to happen is new emotions are going to come and are going to flower from within. I want to tell you this shocking statement that I was thinking of opening with, but I thought it was an interesting statement to me, and I tried it on Steve. I don't think he liked it so much. But I thought that in order to really excel at being someone who really appreciates the good, Hakarat HaTov, you have to be a little bit of a heretic. Okay? Now, what do I mean by that? Okay, it sounds more shocking. He would not be curious if you go into yeshiva and you say that. But what do I mean by that? See, the Torah is not just, a rule book that we tick it off. Torah says this and Torah says this. It is that, but it really isn't. Case in point, you look in a Gemara, you'll find one rabbi saying X, and you'll find another rabbi saying the total opposite. And the question is, how do you mesh those together? The Torah is complicated. Why? Because life is complicated. There's so many different situations, so many things you have to do. You can't just be an automaton and just say, I'll always do this. I'm always going to tell the truth. If anyone's been by my class on Shabbos during the evening, I always tell the truth, right? That's the best way. I'll never tell a lie, right? Then your wife comes home with a dress that you bought, there's no returns on it, and she says, isn't this beautiful? Right? So what do you do then? Sorry, I always tell the truth. Sorry, dear. Right? No, of course not. You don't do that. Because you love your wife and you want to have peace in the home, and it really doesn't make a difference. And you want her to be confident in it, and you say it looks beautiful. So when it comes to these ideas about appreciation, we have to realize that we have to be okay living with opposite ideas. What do I mean? It says in the Sefer Chinuch, if someone would go over to Rabbi Bresler and slug him right in the face, right? So that's it. That guy, I'm going to get him back. I'm going to get revenge. Oh, you asked for my lawnmower? You think you're going to get my lawnmower after you punch me in the face? The Torah says don't take revenge. Not to take revenge. Why? So the Sefer Chinuch says a fascinating thing. It says, what are you going and you're angry at this guy for punching you in the face? Then you realize that he couldn't have punched you unless you deserved it. God wanted you to be punched for whatever reason. Why? I don't know why. You'll have to figure that out. But don't be so angry at the messenger. God was behind it all. So we have to focus that even though this guy goes and he punches me, so I have to realize that it was really God who was behind it. This person was just, he was just an actor in a play. He chose to be in the part, but I have to turn my thoughts towards God and work it out with him. What is with this guy? God will have to take care of him. When it comes to chesed, when it comes to doing good for others, we have to think the exact opposite. Right? You can say it like this. Hakarat HaTov, this guy gave me something, this lady did something for me. Well, what do you mean? God did it. God, I'm such a religious person. God does everything, right? So why do I need to feel good to this person? But no, it's the opposite. Even though it's true, of course God did it. And really, without God, it never would have happened. But still, you have to feel thankful. Still, you have to feel gratitude towards that person. So it's a little bit of a conflicting thing. When it comes to something harming you, you have to realize it's all from God. When it comes to you doing something for someone else, you can't sit back on your laurels. Even so far as gratitude, you can't say, it was all God. No. You have to, every person had a share, had a step in that. Now, how do we understand that? So the truth is, there's a fascinating medrash here. It goes like this. So Moses flees from Egypt, and he killed the Egyptian was beating the Jew, kills the Egyptian. Pharaoh finds out about it. He's on his way out. So he goes to Midian. So who does he meet? Right? It's it's a great plot. He meets the daughters of Yisro. They're being harassed by all these shepherds. Moshe goes and he saves them. It's a wonderful story. They run back to their father, and he says, "What happened?" He says, we were being harassed, and then this Egyptian man, he saved us. So of course, that's Moshe, and then the rest is history. He got married, but the Medrash says a very interesting thing. He says the Egyptian man it wasn't talking about Moshe. Who was it talking about? It was talking about the Egyptian who was beating the Jew. Right? The Egyptian was beating the Jew. We have to thank the Egyptian for beating the Jew. Why? Because the Egyptian beat the Jew. Moshe killed the Egyptian. Moshe was on the run because of that act, and he ended up here and he saved us. Says the Medrash, an interesting mashal. What's the mashal? It says a man was bitten by this poisonous lizard, and he had to jump into the water in order to wash out the poison. While he's there's a kid drowning. So he saves the kid. So what does the kid say? Thank you for saving me. He says, don't thank me, thank the lizard. Right? The lizard wouldn't have bit me. So what do we see from there? It's funny, thank the lizard. But the amazing thing about Hakarat HaTov is, again, God built us to be Hakarat HaTov machines. And I'll tell you why that is, by the way, in a second. But God built us to be, that's what brings us happiness. We have to inculcate that trait. It's called a trait, really. It's called one of the traits that we have to build on. This trait of gratitude, of recognizing good and thanking, it goes so far, is that even these far out, there's many steps that got to this great thing. You have to find every single step that it happened and thank every single person along the line. Why is it that we were built with a Hakarat HaTov? It's a very interesting thing. There's a mitzvah that people valachta b'drachav. You should walk in the ways of God. Right? You're supposed to be like God, just like God was a rachum, just like God is merciful. You have to be merciful. Just like God, well, all the things. God is a Baal Chesed, whatever it says in the Gemara over there. So now, is God Sonas Makar Tov? So you would have to say, if we're trying to emulate God, let's think about it. Does God get anything from us? Not really, right? An infinite, super infinite being, whatever. I'm not going to go into the whole thing because I can't. I really am pretty ignorant in the subject. But the fact that an infinite being doesn't mean us. He's giving to us, and yet God considers all our deeds. Like we did it. We did good things. We gave to Him. All the things that we do in life, God is Makar Tov to us. For all the things that we do good, God is Makar Tov for us. Even though, did we really do anything for Him at the end of the day? We're similar to the lizard, probably much less than the lizard. And yet at the same time, it's as if God thanks us, so to speak, for doing all these things. So therefore, if we want to emulate God, we have to find every step, every little thing that caused us, even if it's unintentional benefit. Everyone always has a little bit of trouble when we get to the inanimate objects part of the class. Because what's interesting is that the lessons, where do we learn out gratitude from the Torah? So we mentioned this medrash, but the famous place that we learn it out from is during the Exodus. God, we're all ready to do the 10 plagues, and God tells Moshe, right, pick up your stick, hand it over to Aaron, and let him raise his hand upon the waters, right? And then we do the same thing for the frog, similar, and also raise your hand upon the ground. It's also Aaron. So the famous Rashi there says, why didn't Moshe was the main, right? Charlton Heston, main star, right? Why is he giving it over to Aaron? The reason is because Moshe had a Hakarat HaTov. He recognized the good. What was the good? Because when he was a little baby, he was, right, and he said, and went into the Nile. The Nile, right, floated along the Nile, and he was saved. So how could he go strike now and smite the Nile? And the same thing is with the dust. He killed an Egyptian and he buried the Egyptian in the dust. Is that it? Yeah. Right. So then how could he go now and turn the dust into these disgusting curly buggies? Right. So he had a Hakarat HaTov. So and therefore, and what's the lesson? If you have to have a Hakarat HaTov even for an inanimate object, certainly for people, and it's a good lesson. We have to ask ourselves. It's a little hard to understand. Because on one hand, the water didn't exactly go out of its way to help Moshe. I mean, if you know the law of physics, so okay, then you put the boat on, it's going to float, and just doing its regular waterly duties, right? With that, you could have put a little boat on, it would have floated. You would have put any, it just happened to be. That was Moshe. It wasn't like the water did anything. Of course, the water is not adamant, so even if it did, it didn't have any say anyway. So what's going on over here? So you see clearly that it's not for the water, right? You're not doing the water a favor. Of course he didn't do the water a favor. Aaron just turned into blood a second later. It's not like we said, okay, we're not doing the blood, right? Aaron did the blood. It's just Moshe can't do it. So the idea seems to be there's a sensitivity in us people. If a good was done to me, you just can't do it. It's inanimate. It didn't do anything special. I just can't do it. And God was saying, and there's a lesson from God. It's not like Moshe was saying, okay, Moshe's a funny guy, inanimate object, so he couldn't do it. I can't get rid of my old car. I'm driving a 1990 Honda. The bumper's falling off. The whole thing is falling apart. The exhaust is totally, it's like total. But how can I do it? It's my trusty car that's got me to the Kollel for 6 years. But this is God speaking. It wasn't that Moshe said, I can't do it. God told Moshe, take the stick, give it to Aaron, and let him do it. That means God is saying, you have a feeling in you. You have a feeling of gratitude. Don't squash that feeling. It's a feeling for a river. It's a feeling for an inanimate object. Didn't do anything special. Don't squash it. If you act on this, if you turn this river into blood, something will happen in you. Not good. Because a person is built to be a gratitude machine. You can't squash that feeling of gratitude. Don't do it. And therefore, God is telling us, it's not Avram said, God is telling us, don't do it. Don't squash those feelings of gratitude. They're so important to us. We have to cultivate them. We have to grow them. Right? Unbelievable. Right? Now, again, we have this problem sometimes with gratitude. Again, if we see it, we'll feel it. But we want to be independent. Like we said with that teenage guy. We want to be independent. I want to stand on my own 2 feet. I don't want to be that someone else made me. Right? And we fight it. It's such a funny thing. But again, this idea of us learning from our relationships from people to God. Right? Rav Wolbe said a very startling statement. I was in the Mir Yeshiva. I didn't understand too much Yiddish, and I still don't understand that. I didn't really get most of his talks, but I remember this. I remember 2 things. This is one of those things. He said, you know what? It's not that you have parents, so God said, oh, you have parents, you have to give them gratitude. No, it's not. He said, if God wanted, we could have grown from trees, no problem. Right? Zoom out, right? Oh, here's another one. Oh, it's great, coming along. We'll tie a ribbon around it. It's the Bechar, right? Bikurim, right? Bechar, Bikurim, right? But no, it's that God built you as a gratitude machine. We need something to practice gratitude on, because we can end up having to show gratitude to our Creator, because He created us. So therefore, He created parents for us. We have parents now that we can spend all this time having gratitude to. That's what I remember. And it's funny, as kids, as we grow up, become teenagers, we want to step out, we want to be the ones, right? I did it myself, I made it myself. And we have to remember, as we get to adulthood, to forget about that idiocy and go back and remember that all the amazing things that our parents do for us and their parents did for us. What's amazing about a guy, this is great, I don't know if I have it here. There was this great thing I saw from Alan Marinas. What does he say? He said, the Musar teachings on gratitude are tough because they don't let us feel sorry for ourselves. One Musar master began to talk about gratitude. This was his talk. It's enough that a human being is alive. Take care. That was it. That's enough. Right? God made us. God created us. That's it. I'm alive. I'm alive. I saw this conversation between somebody. It went like, the idea that did we do anything to become alive? Did you do anything before you were alive that merited you being alive? Right? We didn't do anything. We weren't there. I mean, ignoring all Shamas and Gugul and whatever, but we didn't merit anything. And yet God created us. He created us to love us, to give to us. That's all. Why else are we here? We have to show gratitude. We have to show gratitude. Okay, so what's interesting that we see from the Nile River is that gratitude is not necessarily measured in the effort of the other person. You have to be again. This is another one of those classic cases where there are opposite things, and we have to do both of them. They're opposites. You can't just go by one. On one hand, it doesn't make a difference about if someone gave me something that's so important to me, but to him, they're a rich person, it was nothing. So there's a human. We already have this thing. Oh, yeah, it was nothing for that person, so I don't really have to owe thanks. No, Moshe again. The Nile River was just going about its business, going about its wavy business, doing nothing. It was doing nothing for Moshe. And Moshe, God said, no, you have to feel like gratitude. It doesn't make a difference about the effort of the other person. You got something. You have to feel gratitude. On the other hand, right? Okay, so Rabbi Bresler said we don't care about the effort. On the other hand, person really could have given us nothing, right? I know this. My 3-year-old daughter comes to me with a beautiful picture, right? What is it? Again, I'm not saying it's nothing, but it's really a piece of paper with some scribbles on it, right? But what? She put her heart and soul into that picture. She went around, she drew it for me. Look, Tati, right? So what's the part? The part is that you can't just look at what you get. Sometimes you don't get too much, but you have to look at where the person's coming from, and that's why we have to know people. We can't be obtuse and live in our own little world and not think and look about people. Great people search out. That's why we know Moshe Rabbeinu became Moshe Rabbeinu. He looked to see what was going on with the sneh. The idea is that we have to get to know our people. We have to get to know the people we love, the people that are around us, know them, and know when something happens to you. Again, you have to hakara. You have to be aware of the good that is coming to you. You have to be aware of what they put in. And then you won't have a situation where somebody goes and says, oh, I put in all this time and they didn't even... No. Show the hakara. Just show it. Okay. Now, Rabbi Shlomo Miller says an interesting idea. just stam, it's good to know. Why was it that we're learning all this Hakarat HaTov by the Exodus? It's like a funny place to put it. Like here, we're about to go out of Egypt. Let's learn about Hakarat HaTov, right? Why are we learning about it over here? Again, it's one of the Yisodos. It's one of the why over here. So it's interesting. The whole Rabbi Yisrael Miller says the whole story of the Exodus is predicated upon a lack of Hakarat HaTov. Why? We know because it says a new king in Egypt arose who did not know Yosef. So one opinion is that it was a new king. He didn't know Yosef. But the other opinion is that no, he knew good and well about Yosef and how Yosef saved the entire Egypt from starvation. But what? He chose to forget about it. He said, forget it, right? The lack of Hakarat HaTov, a lack of gratitude. How could Yosef's people who saved all of Egypt be treated such a way? So there was a lack of Hakarat HaTov. So God needed to rectify that during the plagues themselves. So no, Hakarat HaTov is important. I thought it was an interesting thing. And the Chassam Sofer says an interesting thing also and continues on that. Again, very wild. Here you have the Jews coming out of Egypt. It says they came out chemushim, they came out armed. So Pashup Pshat is, even if they did come out armed, they were still in the slave mentality. They weren't ready to tussle with the Egyptians, but they did come out armed. And the Chassam Sofer asked the question, why did they turn around and make war with the Egyptians? Right? That was his question. So again, maybe you might answer another answer. But he says, no, because the Torah says, don't hate the Egyptian, because at the end of the day, we were guests. We had some very good years in Egypt, right? Very good years. So we were sojourner in their land, so therefore we shouldn't hate them. So the Chacham say that, right, don't cast a stone in the cistern that you drink from, right? So even though we suffered greatly at those hands, the Jewish people, wasn't proper for them to wipe out the Egyptians. God did it himself. Unbelievable thing. It's like the sensitivity here is amazing, because here you have the people, they subjugated you, they enslaved you, they're the poster people for subjugation, that even the world today, right, they steal the Yom Tov of Passover for every revolution or whatever freedom fighter that comes about, right? Passover is this universal thing, but it really isn't. And, okay. The Talmud says an interesting story, okay? Rav Chia's wife would cause him extreme distress. Yet whenever he would find an appropriate gift, he would wrap it up and send it to her. Okay? That's the story. Now, do you think he sent her a gift to try to patch up the marriage, to make it better? Was he just trying to, if he sends her a gift, maybe things will be better? The implication of the Gemara is not that way. That the marriage wasn't getting any better. It was what it was. But yet still, he sent her a gift. So the students asked him, like, why are you sending her a gift? Now, why did they ask her? It wasn't to patch up the marriage, so why are you sending a gift? So he said, it's not enough that she raises my kids, meaning, and this star Gemara, which is an interesting Gemara, it's not enough she raises my kids, and she saves me from sin. Right? Now, again, what does it mean, save me from sin? I guess he's married, he won't run off after other women. I can't imagine that their relationship was so great. Yet the fact that he focused on one thing. There was one thing, that's all that was needed. She raises the kids. Every husband knows that if they have their kids, Reb Dov, you ever have a few kids for more than a few hours? It's like, forget it. It's like, that from that thing alone, I think every husband should try it for a little bit. It's not believable. It's just not, it's not possible. But the story is that from that alone, he showed Hakarat HaTov, he showed gratitude, and he felt the gratitude. It wasn't just, it was like an obvious thing to him. Like his students couldn't understand. It was like, what are you talking about? Right? It's enough. That's enough. Okay, here's a story of Nachum Mendel, the Kotzker Rebbe. Whenever he would have to replace his shoes, he would wrap them up tenderly in newspaper before placing them in the garbage. And he would declare, how can I simply toss away such a fine pair of shoes that served me so well these past years? Right? Unbelievable. And the Musar teacher, Rabbi Yehuda Bresler, there was a story, he was talking to a student, and he was folding up his talis. Now, the talis was large, so he had to rest it on a bench when he was folding it. After he was folding it, he noticed the bench was dusty. He got a little dirt on his talis. So he went and he dusted off the bench. The students started grabbing it like, Revelia, what are you doing? We'll dust off the bench. He says, no, I must clean it myself. For I have to show gratitude to the bench where I rested and folded my talis. Very interesting. These aren't like amazing stories, but they're amazing in just the sensitivity of gratitude. And again, the bench doesn't feel anything, the bench doesn't know anything, it's us. We don't want to squelch those feelings. Now, once we have those feelings of gratitude, we have to say it out. As I heard from Rabbi Waxman, who just walked in the door, I think I heard it from him. But the Jewish people are called Yehudim, right? Why are we called Yehudim? Because it's from the language Yehuda, which happens to be my name. Right? That Leah went and she thanked Hashem, right? The language of Hodah, of thanks. And they asked the question, like, and it says that there's a startling statement in the Talmud that says, until Leah, no one ever thanked God, which is like a startling statement, because what do you mean, Avram didn't thank God, Yitzchak didn't thank God. So everyone has their take on it. But I don't know, I would think that perhaps everyone thanked God, but not necessarily for the little things. Leah already had many kids. She already had 4 kids. She was up on her sister already. Sorry, 3 kids. She already... It was what? It was 4 because of Leah? Okay. Anyway, whatever the case may be, is that, this was something extra. She saw, I don't know, to me, she saw that even though she had so much, she was still able to thank Hashem for something that she wouldn't necessarily think. You would think you had so much already that you wouldn't perhaps notice another kid out. Not exactly sure about that thought. We'll see. Okay. So now we have all these, I guess we're running out of time here, but what type of exercises can we do? So I'm sure everyone heard of this already. It's made the rounds, but Rav Noach has a great exercise in Hakarat HaTov that's very difficult to do if you've tried it, right? He says you want to spend an hour of your time writing down things that you're grateful for in this world, things that are good, things that you're grateful for. And he's very funny. He says the first 15 minutes fly by, right? Just, this is easy, Rabbi, right? He's just writing it down. The next 15 minutes, the pen moves a little slower, right? And the next, he says a joke, right? He says the next 15 minutes, the pen moves, right, really slow. And you could maybe get through it if you include your eyebrows and your socks, right? Including the list. And then the last 15 minutes are bloody murder. I don't am I allowed to say that? I'm sorry. Right? And I'm American. I'm sorry. The last 15 minutes are horrible. They're excruciating. Once the list is compiled, after you do that, spend 1 hour. So you don't have to do that every day, but add one thing every day. It's a fascinating exercise. Right? I've tried it. It's a fascinating exercise. And the power of the exercise is clear. You're going to be conscious. You're actually going to be thinking about our blessings here. There's another exercise that we can do. We have these cookies in the back. Okay? And Rabbi Bergman was nice enough to cooperate with me on the exercise. Right? So now, once you hold the cookie in your hand, right, then you have to envision the farmer that's plowing his fields from morning to night, and he rises and sunrise and plants the seeds, and then he grows. He returns each day to weed, right? He has to weed it, something that I don't have too much experience of. If you see my lawn. After a few months, tall green stalks are swaying back and forth in the soft breeze, and the farmer, right, is getting out there harvesting and binding the stalks and the sheaves, and they're delivered to the mill. Okay, you could go through the whole thing. Unbelievable, the baker, the eggs, the sugar, the cocoa, right? All the good stuff that the Oreos, and I don't know how they make the cream, I have no idea. But that's also an amazing process. Right? And then at work has to arrange them, all these people that we have to thank, all these processes, all these things in order for the cookies to get to your supermarket. And then we have to thank Rabbi Bergman for purchasing, or Mrs. Bergman for purchasing them. And then finally you can hold the cookie in your hand. That's an amazing thing. And then, right? You still have to contemplate photosynthesis and how all this thing happens, right? And the sun being 93 million miles away. There's a lot of things you could do. This cookie might get stale before you actually eat it, right? A single grain, and how the amazing of seeds, and how one little grain can produce all these amazing grains. And then with that cookie in your hand, then you make a bracha and you eat it. It's an amazing exercise. There's an interesting, I have a few stories. What? Yeah. So I have it. I think Mordechai Miller wrote it up. That's where I got it from. Okay, so they went to the Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, with a kid. The kid was being kicked out of the dorm. Why? Because if you're in the dormitory of Yeshiva, you have to come to Shachris. You have to come to the morning prayers. And you know how kids are. It's hard to get up in the morning. So this kid wasn't making it. So they were going to kick him out of the dormitory. So they asked the Rosh Yeshiva, and he said, yes, he must be kicked out of the dormitory, but please send him to me afterwards. So the kid First he heard he was being kicked out. That was one thing. Now he heard he had to go into the Rosh Yeshiva's office. He was freaking out. Maybe I'm going to kick out of Yeshiva. He didn't know what did the Rosh Yeshiva want from me. So he goes to the Rosh Yeshiva, and Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky says, you're going to have to leave the dorm. Do you have any alternative arrangements? Well, I don't know. I just heard about this now. Okay, you could stay by my house. Right? He was like, what? So Rabbi Kamenetsky explained, your grandfather used to give money to the Seattle Kollel, where I used to learn when I was in Europe. And since I was the beneficiary of your grandfather's support, I owe you a favor, and I'm glad I have the chance to do it today. I hope that's not why I kicked him out in the first place, just to do that. But true, I cannot let you sleep in the dormitory, but you can sleep in my house out of appreciation. That's called the sensitivity. That's called appreciation. I'll end with one interesting story. But, oh man, I forgot about that. 1 second. Forgot all about this whole Indian. Okay, we'll skip the story just to, we forgot all about this point. So one of the things that we have to work on if we're ever going to get to gratitude is this thing called taking things for granted. Right? That's an obvious thing. We in our minds, we think that we're owed things. Again, like we said about life itself, we think we're owed things. We think everything's coming to us, and therefore we don't recognize when someone gives something that's a good thing. The trick to get around this really is that we already saw that you have to have a Hakarat HaTov, really, your joy, your happiness as a Hakarat HaTov machine. You have to have joy even when somebody really is supposed to do something for you. For instance, you're at a checkout counter and you have a checkout person and they're bagging the groceries. So on one hand you say, oh, he gets paid. Right? He gets paid for his service. What do I need to say thank you? Okay, I'll say thank you. What do I need to feel gratitude for that person? But it's really not true. Every single thing in life is not coming to us. That's something that deep down in ourselves, we don't want to feel we owe anyone. We want to feel everything comes to us, and that's a very immature thing. And what we have sometimes the problem is that we don't grow up. Even though I age, I'm having a lot of white hairs, but a lot of things but we're still the same children. It's very sad. Sometimes we do see, I'm a mature guy. But sometimes we really see people that act like babies. We're still kids. Like in a way, we're still kids, and that's not how it is. We have to grow up. We have to say, everything's not coming to me. There are people that are giving me things, and this meet is such of extreme importance. And certainly for relationships, it's obvious that way, right? The second we start, we always hear that the failed relationship is always, just wasn't doing it for me. It just wasn't happening for me. I don't know what happened. It's just not going for me anymore, right? That's how a relationship tanks, any type of relationship. The idea that we're grateful for everything that we get, and we focus on it, we'll literally live lives besimcha. If you look, let me just skip all this stuff. So I want to let's pass these out a little. Maybe we could read over a little bit. Can you pass them out? Oh, well, anyway, let me just read. Rabbi Pliskin is unbelievable. What?
Leave it on the back for people to pick.
Okay. So let's. So here, I just like the way he phrases this. He says, by mastering gratitude, you will become truly alive. Here are 10 formulas to master gratitude. Right? Now, one of the most important things when learning about Amida, I'm not going to read the sheet because we don't have any time, but one of the most important things that we have to learn is that the chitzonius is more around the pneumius, that our outside affects our inside. Even though we talked about feeling the gratitude and then having that blossom out as thanks and then actually feeling the gratitude, acting towards that person with love, but it's really the opposite way also. And if we want to be able to show gratitude, the first thing that we could do, without changing ourselves so much, is just act like you have gratitude. Even if you don't feel it, act like you do. And we'll be surprised that when we actually work on acting like we do, all of a sudden the relationships will change, the love will start flowing, and there will be gratitude both ways, and we'll flower and have amazing relationships. Okay, I think we'll stop here. Thank you everybody for coming and listening.
Thank you very, very much.